The perfect day for me on the bicycle would be something similar to today, around 12 to 15 degrees, not much wind, clear skies. You don't get too dehydrated because you're not sweating too much, and yeah, that's my perfect day.
Steel itself is the material that we work most with at Genesis. We're a materials brand essentially, but for the kind of product that we do and that we're known for, steel is really where it's at. So we work with steel of all grades, up to 953 for the team bikes.
At Reynolds, our speciality is tubular metals, and Reynolds started back in 1898 as a result of a patent, and we primarily work in steel and titanium alloys here in the factory in Birmingham. What we do here at Reynolds is to actually take large fat pipes and turn them into very, very thin wall tubes, and the strength is still there and gives us fatigue life. And what Reynolds has managed to do over the years is take the strength to weight ratio up by about a factor of 4 since the 1900s.
We compete throughout the UK, but also Europe as well, and some big races like the Tour of Britain and the Ride London Classic. You know, and it's you know, kind of a really strong brand that we have, and you know, an image that we have in the UK now as well. You know, we're very well recognised for the races that we do, and kind of the steel bike is a big part of that as well.
You're racing World Tour teams, you're racing Pro Continental teams, and I raced the Volio over everything, and I just had an absolute ball. I think the most important thing in bike riding now, with technology being so advanced, is what you're really looking for first is the ride quality versus the lightest or the most greatest thing that you can spend all your money on, because you want to go out and ride it again the next day.
We do what's called cold working. One is we take weight out where it's not required, and the other is we actually increase the tensile strength of the tube as well. So for a typical tube compared to its what's called plain gauge equivalent, we can reduce the weight of that round tube by over 40% and actually increase the strength. So the strength to weight ratio of that tube could be well over 50 or 60% higher after we finish the butting process. And for bike tubes, this has been something we've been doing for, say, well over 100 years.
953 stiffness is off the scale. You know, carbon's a great material, but steel is also, and I think kind of a lot of people sort of forget that. You know, we're very much that materials have great applications for depending on, you know, what race you want to do or what kind of riding you want to do. And you know, with the steel bike, it gets used a lot in the criterium racing, which, you know, the Tour Series is a really big scene in the UK. It's, you know, where we get the most airtime, and it's highly competitive as well. You know, we won it a couple of years back. You know, and a lot of the riders like using the steel bike just for its acceleration out of corners, the stiffness, kind of the feedback that it gives.
What will happen for each of these riders is that they will have a preference in terms of how their bike performs. Carbon fibre will clearly work for the bulk of the people there, but steel has an advantage in terms of it's a very consistent material to reproduce. So from frame to frame, what they'll feel is the same sort of thing. And when you're training, you want something that'll work like that. And a steel frame can be actually made to be very, very stiff.
All bikes were made with steel, you know, and then aluminium came along and then carbon quickly after that, and it was sort of a double blow. Steel kind of went to the bottom of the pile, and then we reintroduced this, you know, along with a couple of other brands that were doing some great stuff with steel as well, but we brought it to a level where we were racing, you know, that people weren't doing that with steel, and it was, you know, kind of the feedback that we got was that people loved to see that steel bike because it kind of reminds them of why they got into cycling in the first place. You know, they're heroes of cycling. It's kind of that Eddy Merckx era, you know, Greg LeMond, that all won Tour de France on a steel bike. So, you know, it was that real interest, and hey, wow, actually I didn't know that you could still do that with steel. Any areas where we can get that, you know, marginal gain as such as, you know, as a phrase that's used in cycling quite widely at the moment. But yeah, it's those little areas, so kind of tube by tube, we'll take it as far as we can possibly push it. So the pinnacle for us would be to see a Tour de France winner on a steel bike. You know, I think we're not a million miles off at the moment in terms of the products that we've got and how good it is. You know, it's just that final step, so we'll sit down with our engineers and with Reynolds and see what we can work on, and you know, hopefully in 5-10 years time it's something that we'll be able to see.